This morning, a major escalation in President Trump's global trade war, with the president releasing a letter announcing a 50% tariff on imports from Brazil starting August 1st.
This week, Washington stunned the world. The announcement reverberated across continents, leaving economists and trade experts scrambling to assess the potential fallout by slapping a sweeping 50% tariff on all goods imported from Brazil. This unprecedented move immediately sent shockwaves through international markets, triggering a flurry of emergency meetings and frantic phone calls between government officials and business leaders. Effective immediately, this move marks a dramatic escalation in trade tensions. The implications are far-reaching, potentially impacting everything from consumer prices to long-term investment strategies. In trade tensions between the two largest economies in the Americas, for years the United States and Brazil have enjoyed a relatively stable trade relationship, but this new tariff throws that stability into serious doubt. The tariff is a blanket measure not aimed at any one industry, meaning no sector of the Brazilian economy is safe from its impact. From agriculture to manufacturing, businesses are bracing for significant disruptions. But at the heart of Brazil's export-driven economy, the Brazilian government has condemned the tariff as unfair and protectionist, vowing to explore all available options to defend its economic interests. President Trump's decision signals a return to aggressive protectionism, a move that could reshape global trade dynamics and spark retaliatory measures from other countries, catching businesses and policymakers off guard. Many are questioning the long-term consequences of this decision, fearing a potential trade war that could harm both economies. For decades, the US and Brazil have traded everything from oil and steel, fueling economic growth and creating jobs in both nations, to coffee and orange juice, products that have become staples in American households and key drivers of the Brazilian economy. Overnight, that relationship is upended. Supply chains are thrown into disarray, and businesses are scrambling to find alternative sources and markets. The stated goal: protect American jobs. The Trump administration argues that the tariff will level the playing field and encourage companies to invest in domestic production. The immediate result? Chaos in supply chains and a major blow to Brazil's economy. The Brazilian stock market plummeted, and analysts are predicting a significant slowdown in economic growth. Now, both nations face a critical choice, a decision that will have lasting consequences for their economies and their relationship. Retaliation and escalation, which could lead to a full-blown trade war, or negotiation and compromise, which could pave the way for a more stable and mutually beneficial trade relationship. The world is watching as this conflict threatens to reshape trade across the Americas and potentially trigger a global economic slowdown. The stakes are high, and the outcome remains uncertain. In a move that reverberated through international trade circles, President Trump announced tariffs on Brazilian steel and aluminum. He justified the tariff by accusing Brazil of unfair trade practices, specifically citing concerns over currency manipulation that he claimed gave Brazilian exporters an unfair advantage. The core of the argument centered on a persistent trade deficit, a situation where the United States imports more goods from Brazil than it exports. This imbalance, according to the administration, needed to be rectified to ensure fair trade practices. The administration argues the tariffs are needed to protect American jobs and rebalance trade, particularly in sectors like steel and aluminum, which have faced increased competition from foreign producers. The goal is to revitalize domestic industries and create more opportunities for American workers. This stance is a clear echo of Trump's America First agenda, a policy framework that prioritizes American interests in trade, security, and international relations. It's a message that resonates deeply with his base and underscores his commitment to putting American workers and businesses first. But the numbers, when examined closely, tell a more nuanced story, revealing complexities that go beyond simple trade imbalances and accusations of unfair practices. A deeper dive into the data is necessary to understand the full picture. For instance, the U.S. goods deficit with Brazil is modest compared to the much larger deficits with countries like China or Mexico. This raises questions about whether Brazil was specifically targeted for strategic or political reasons, rather than purely economic ones. Furthermore, the U.S. actually runs a surplus in services with Brazil, a sector often overlooked in trade discussions. This surplus helps to offset the goods deficit and contributes positively to the overall trade relationship. Economists dispute claims of currency manipulation, arguing that the fluctuations in the Brazilian real are primarily driven by market forces and broader economic conditions rather than deliberate government intervention. They note that Brazil's real is volatile due to a variety of factors, including global commodity prices, investor sentiment, and domestic political developments, not government policy specifically designed to devalue the currency for trade advantages. Critics say these complex issues are best resolved through diplomatic negotiation and dialogue, fostering mutual understanding and finding common ground to address trade imbalances and other concerns. They argue against blanket tariffs that punish all sectors of the Brazilian economy, including those that are not engaged in unfair trade practices, potentially harming American consumers and businesses as well. The reality is that the move is likely driven more by political considerations than purely economic ones, serving as a powerful symbol of the administration's commitment to its base. The message is simple and direct. America is fighting back against what it perceives as unfair trade practices, regardless of the potential economic costs or diplomatic repercussions. The sudden imposition of tariffs by the United States sent shockwaves through Brazil's economic and political circles. The move was perceived as an aggressive act, one that threatened to destabilize key sectors of the Brazilian economy. Brasilia responded swiftly and defiantly. President Lula, taking center stage, condemned the tariffs as economic aggression, calling them a politically motivated attack on Brazil's sovereignty. He emphasized that Brazil would not be bullied or intimidated by protectionist measures. He vowed to defend Brazilian industries and workers, ensuring that the livelihoods of countless families would not be jeopardized by these unfair trade practices. Recognizing the need for a united front, he immediately sought support from BRICS partners to counter U.S. pressure, leveraging existing alliances to strengthen Brazil's position on the global stage. Brazil rejected U.S. claims of unfair trade, arguing that their trade practices were in full compliance with international regulations and agreements, insisting on dialogue but refusing to negotiate under duress. Brazil made it clear that it was open to finding a mutually beneficial resolution, but not under the shadow of coercive tariffs. Behind the scenes, Brazil prepared a multi-pronged response, a comprehensive strategy designed to address the immediate crisis and safeguard its long-term economic interests. This included the preparation for legal action at the WTO, challenging the legality and justification of the U.S. tariffs under international trade law, and plans for targeted retaliatory tariffs on sensitive U.S. goods, carefully selected to maximize economic impact while minimizing harm to Brazilian consumers. The goal: inflict political pain on Trump's base by targeting goods produced in states that heavily supported the administration, thereby increasing domestic pressure on the U.S. government, and force the U.S. back to the table to engage in meaningful negotiations aimed at resolving the trade dispute in a fair and equitable manner. It's a risky strategy, a high-stakes gamble with potentially far-reaching consequences for both nations. One that could escalate into a full-blown trade war, with devastating effects on global trade and economic stability, or bring the U.S. to negotiate, paving the way for a more balanced and sustainable trade relationship between the two countries. Brazil is determined not to stand alone, and is actively seeking international support to navigate this challenging period and protect its economic interests. The 50% tariff hits Brazil's export powerhouses hardest. Oil exports to U.S. refineries, Brazil's largest trade flow, are suddenly uncompetitive, leaving Petrobras scrambling for new buyers. Coffee growers face a devastating loss of the U.S. market, threatening thousands of small farmers. Steel and iron exports, vital to Brazil's industry, are now priced out, risking layoffs and stalled investments. Even orange juice, Brazil's global specialty, will cost more in American supermarkets, with domestic producers unable to fill the gap quickly. Both countries face higher prices, supply chain shocks, and economic pain. The tariff announcement sent shockwaves through financial markets. In Brazil, stocks plunged and the real weakened, as exporters faced a sudden loss of their biggest market. U.S. markets dipped too, with companies reliant on Brazilian imports bracing for higher costs. For American consumers, the impact will be felt at the checkout. Coffee, orange juice, and even beef will get pricier. U.S. manufacturers using Brazilian steel or components will see costs rise, fueling inflation. In Brazil, factories may cut production and jobs, while farmers and ranchers face plummeting incomes. The economic shock threatens growth and stability in both countries. The fallout is just beginning. The tariffs are about more than trade. They're entangled in political maneuvering. Trump's move is seen as a signal to Brazil over the trial of his ally, Jair Bolsonaro, and a response to Lula's push for a stronger BRICS alliance. At the recent BRICS summit, Lula called for less reliance on the US dollar, angering Washington. The tariffs punish Brazil for challenging US dominance and send a warning to other nations considering alternative blocs. This is a clash of worldviews, America first versus a multipolar order. Trade is now a weapon in a larger geopolitical struggle. Resolving this conflict will require more than economic compromise. It's a political battle on the world stage. Brazil's response is threefold: diplomacy, legal action, and the threat of retaliation. Foreign Minister Vieira is seeking talks with the US, hoping for a negotiated off-ramp. Simultaneously, Brazil is filing a formal complaint at the WTO, arguing the tariffs violate global trade rules. While the WTO's power is limited, a favorable ruling would boost Brazil's legitimacy and rally international support. Meanwhile, Brazil's Congress is fast-tracking a law to allow reciprocal tariffs, targeting politically sensitive US exports like soybeans and pork. The message: Brazil won't back down, and is ready to hit back if needed. It's a calculated gamble, seeking peace, but preparing for escalation. The US-Brazil trade conflict could end in negotiation or spiral into a damaging trade war. A quick compromise would restore stability, but trust would be slow to return. A tit-for-tat escalation would hurt both economies, disrupt global supply chains, and encourage protectionism worldwide. For Brazil, the crisis is a risk and an opportunity to diversify exports, strengthen new alliances, and build resilience. For the world, the dispute is a warning. Trade is now a tool of geopolitics, and its weaponization threatens global stability. International institutions like the WTO are weakened, and the risk of economic fragmentation grows. The stakes are global, and the outcome will shape the future of trade. The 50% tariff is more than a trade measure, it's a high-stakes gamble with deep political roots. It pits Trump's America First nationalism against Lula's multipolar vision, with both sides risking economic and political fallout. For Brazil, the tariffs threaten key industries and force a strategic pivot. For the US, they risk higher prices and strained alliances. The conflict exposes the fragility of global partnerships and the dangers of politicizing trade. A trade war would be mutually destructive. A diplomatic solution demands real compromise. The world is watching. Will confrontation win, or can diplomacy prevail? The future of the Americas and global trade hangs in the balance.
That's a wrap on today's video. If you enjoyed it, smash that like button. Subscribe for more content like this, and let us know in the comments what you'd like to see next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you soon.